I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today across Australia. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. My name is Shorju Das Salmon, an intern at the ACS Foundation, and I will be your virtual Big Day In co-host for today. Today, we'll be hearing from two intriguing presenters with completely different backgrounds. The amazing Mike Gardiner, CEO and founder of BuzzyGames, and the wonderful Krista Jordan from the Australian Film, TV and Radio School. Today's presentations are going to be very interactive, so make sure that you're ready to ask questions or provide a response while the presenters are talking. Just hit the Ask a Question button on the bottom right and we'll take care of the rest. First up, we're going to hear from Mike Gardiner. Mike is on a mission to get 100 million students collaborating and creating their own games by 2025. He's the founder of BuzzyGames and an advocate for accessible STEM education for K-12 students. Coding games since the age of 12, at 21 he founded his first software development company, and since then has led the development of over 50 applications and 20 games. So please join me in welcoming our first presenter for today, Mike Gardiner from BuzzyGames, with collaboration and creativity, future work skills. Mike, I think you've been muted.
Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. And thanks, Shorzu, for the heads up on the mute and the great introduction. So yes, I am the founder and CEO of BuzzyGames, and myself and my small team at the moment are on a mission. We've already started actually getting towards 100 million students collaborating and creating. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that I really love and that really drive me, excuse me, and get me excited to get out of bed and to go and fix bugs and all that stuff that can be frustrating. So those three things are really just why collaborating can be amazing, why creativity is going to be, or is already fast becoming, one of the most valuable, critical future skills for us all to have in a future that we can only imagine, or it probably can't even imagine what it's going to be like. And I'm going to talk about games as well and play. Why? Because it's a big part of my life, and it's also one of the ways that we help facilitate this. So I'm going to go through a couple of slides in a moment, but I'd just like to show you guys a quick video of what we do and what I do at BuzzyGames. So I mentioned that we get kids to team up and create their own games. This is just a small, I guess, sample of what that experience looks like.
It was awesome. It was really fun. Pretty good. Super duper fun. Awesome.
Yeah, so that was just a short video of what it's like for some of our younger kids. We work with kids up to 16 at the moment, and we love pairing them with some of our own game design and development coaches and watching students like yourselves go from absolute novices or having no coding experience to going on to using industry tools like Unity 3D and Unreal and Photoshop. That's what excites us. Now, I want to throw out a number to everyone who's with us today, and that's 400 trillion. So I'd like you guys just for a moment just to think about what that number might mean. Like, what is 400 trillion? You know, if you can have a chat right now, no need to post answers, but you know, have a think, like that's a big number, right? Like what could that number represent? I've had guesses from students that are amazing that say, is that the amount of websites in the world? Is that the most, you know, is that the data that's stored on all servers? Is that the amount of particles in the universe? So these are all good guesses, but I want to share with you that that number, and it's debatable, is what some people believe is the probability of any of us being alive right now in this moment. All right, so it's a good reminder that the time we're in right now, although it's been turbulent and sometimes can seem beyond challenging, is an extremely, excuse me, unique time. And I'm going to touch on, you know, why that's been important in our journey and why that might be important in yours in a bit more. All right, so here's another number, 400 million. Do any of our students or even teachers today have an idea of what 400 million might mean? And I'll give you a clue. It's a game that most of you would have played, and that number would be the amount of players. Also, this number's probably out of date by now. So if you guys have guessed it, that is Minecraft, and I think it's closer to 600 million. Now, the cool thing to think is some of you might have already started developing apps. Some of you have created games. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you've played with animation tools. Whatever you've done, if you've already started your path and you're already creating things, you already increases your chances of making the next Minecraft. So I'd say a lot of you know the story of how Minecraft started. It was one developer, then it was two, and then it was a few more, right? And that first version, it was rubbish. I think if any of us asked Notch, you know, what his very first version, what he thought about it, he would probably say it's rubbish, right? And that's okay, because the first version of anything we do, we just have to accept that it's not going to be the best, right? We can never make something that's perfect. And in fact, Minecraft is an amazing example of a fun game, creative game where we can build almost whatever we want, right? But an example of a game that started with one person having an idea, building it, testing it, and then, more importantly, getting it out to other people to test and provide feedback. And that led to Minecraft, as we know, being purchased by one of the biggest software companies in the world, Microsoft, for $2.5 billion. So I think that's a reminder for all of us. We're in a time now where we do not, and we should not, aim low. Any of us have the opportunity to make something that can change the world, whether it's a game, an app, you know, something that could help climate or helping the world be more connected. We can all do this, okay? Why? Because we have built up many layers of technology over the last 20, 30 years. We have connected ourselves globally via the internet, via social media tools, which help us share information. We have the tools to do it. Now, to hopefully prove what's possible, we are going to do let's call it an experiment, right? So everything is an experiment when you haven't done it before, and there's always a chance that something might go wrong. That's okay. We embrace failure. I know I've failed so much in my career, and I've enjoyed some of those failures. Some of them have, you know, nearly brought me to tears, but we're going to embrace it. So for any of you who've been quick enough, you would have noticed that there is a web address on your screen. That's buzzygames.com.au/BDI. Now, you may or may not be able to get there depending on how your teacher feels about you jumping on a device and doing it, but if you can get a device, or if you can go to that address, we're going to see if we can break a BuzzyGames record and have 10s, 20s, maybe hundreds of us playing a word puzzle game that was made by students yesterday. So I'll leave that up just for a few more moments and see if anyone can connect. Meanwhile, I'm going to switch to another tab. And what we're looking at here is a game that was built in Unity, which is a game engine. Some of you might be familiar with the logo for some of your favorite games. Another game engine might be Unreal, which you also might be familiar with. And a game engine is basically the software that helps render graphics to the screen, provides a way for input from controllers to be translated to objects on the screen, handle behavior, all the cool stuff, right? All the technical stuff. So in this, I'm going to reload this. And if we've got people that have gone to buzzygames.com.au/BDI, I want you to click on the Join Game button. Now that should be at the top of the screen. And in a moment, when I reload this game, we'll have a connect code. So if any of you have played, let's say, Kahoot in Classroom, this uses the same sort of mechanism to connect players globally to a screen or to a game that's running. Now, I know we've got a bit of a delay here today, so we're going to see if people can connect. And that connect code will be 444339. So if anyone has that link opened, the connect code will be 444339. And what we're going to do is we're going to play a couple of rounds just to see, what's possible. So I'm going to load up a game that was made just yesterday by a small group of students. And in this game, you will try to make words using your finger by connecting them up on your device. And that might be, okay, that might be a laptop. You can go backwards, you can go diagonals. I think they've got the rules where the scoring is based on Scrabble. So, but you'd have to ask the students that made this. The idea is to try and get as many words as you can. And every time someone else connects, we can see their avatar and their color. The screen now, when it lights up with colors, is actually players that have joined and are making words. Now I'm going to rerun it because I know we've got a little bit of a delay. And I think we'll have one more go after this and see if we can get that player count, up to 50. Would be pretty cool. Now, for those of us that maybe don't have a device and we're looking at the screen, we could try and put some words. Maybe we could help someone next to us has a device. The games that we create. They shouldn't rely on everyone having the same access, okay? If we want things to be accessible, we want everyone to be able to join in, there should be layers of ways that people can interact with both our games or our apps. In this case, you could be finding words, sharing them with someone next to you, or maybe you could be writing down the ones that you found. These are all examples of the way you could interact with this and have a little bit of fun. It's also an example of where in collaboration, you might break the roles or you might split strengths in one area. Are connecting to one of our game servers, Sydney, that is then relaying your inputs to my laptop, and my laptop has the Unity game running, and it's then delivering that to the screen, which, to add one more piece of the puzzle, is being captured and delivered over Microsoft Teams. So when even hearing myself say that, it sounds very complicated, and a lot of the technology we take for granted now has a lot of moving pieces and parts, but all right, let's go we're going to go one more game and see if we get a few more joined in. It's been pretty good so far. Whoever's been getting the highest score, congrats, good games. Yeah, so there are a lot of moving parts and pieces, right? And sometimes it can seem daunting create technology. I'm going to give you a pro tip on how I approach and how I practice over my career. That is, first thing is don't start with canvas. So this might be counterintuitive. Start with a small example or some known example that you like or that is close to what you want to make, and then modify it. So for anyone who has done modding in Minecraft or Roblox coding, you guys are on a great start. Now, I just want to shout out to whoever got 127 points. I don't know who you were, but congrats on getting those points. The thing that, and I'm just going to close that tab for now, and I'm just going to unshare my screen just so we can have a chat. There we go. Okay, so what do we do there, right? Did we? Well, what I saw was students from everywhere, and I don't even know exactly where everyone is right now. I know that we have students for BuzzyGames in Ohio and San Francisco, Sydney, Perth. Okay, and I know it excites me when I see students from different countries and cities connecting and collaborating to make games. Why am I excited? Because I am optimistic that anyone who is watching this under the age of 17 has the opportunity to bring this world together. Okay, this might not be through games, it might be through something else, some other mechanism, but I am so optimistic that this younger generation, given the tools and given the sense of purpose that you all seem to have, can make these things better. All right, every generation before you has probably messed up, but it's probably done some good along the way as well and laid a foundation, and that's part of what is possible. So just to change things up a bit now, I want to share a couple of hacks for finding your dream career in software development. And I'm going to share a fail of mine that if I had my time again, that I probably wouldn't do. So here's some hacks, okay? And keep in mind, before founding BuzzyGames, I was lucky enough to spend 9 months helping the platform team at a company called Atlassian. I've helped other e-commerce companies like Red Balloon and taken on lots of amazing projects. So first thing is, if you want to be a software engineer or you want to go into this area, you want to be a game developer, and you don't know who companies like Atlassian and Canva are, you should go and look them up. All right, so I know ACS does a great job hooking up school leavers with internships, and there's other companies like that. So find them, but don't wait until you get to the point where you're looking for a job and you're searching Seek or Indeed. It's too late. Okay, so I can tell you that the junior developers that I've hired have all had me tell them no at least twice. All right, and they have all persisted. And what has definitely got them over the line is not necessarily a CV that was pretty or a well fleshed out portfolio. It was a few things, and these are the things that I think if you have them, you will increase your chances of getting opportunities. The one is go and get a GitHub account, start creating, start publishing, start sharing. This comes back to collaboration. 100%. I guarantee you that the development managers and hiring managers are not spending time in CVs. They're looking at how active you are in GitHub or whatever repository or whatever site you share your material. So be active, create, share, fail. It doesn't matter if you've got 10 rubbish projects. It's the fact that you are creating and developing and learning that starts laying down a future CV or history. So if you can imagine in 5 to 10 years, the amount of time that anyone will spend looking at CVs versus clicking a button and pulling up your, let's just use GitHub as an example, history, okay, it won't be much time spent on CVs. So do that for sure. Be persistent is my second hack. Do not take no. Don't take the first or the second no as a no. Take that as a maybe. All right, now, I've had this advice myself and I had to unlearn some habits. I am a crazy introvert. I am. Like, I am the kid that was super shy, right? I didn't even want to turn up to my own birthday parties. In fact, a couple of times I think I didn't when I was younger. So you're hearing someone who grew up super shy and had to work through that. Yeah, so don't take no. If you hear a no, say, okay, thanks, appreciate it, I've got some feedback. How else can I ask questions? How else can I get into this opportunity? You know, what sort of software development tools could I use or should I be looking at if I want to work at your company in the next 3 years? Do that, and I guarantee you 100% that you will be in front of 3/4 of the applicants that you're competing against. The third hack, which is kind of like going back to the theme that I've been talking about, which is collaborate. Okay, so I don't have many regrets. I've had a pretty interesting life. 18 months ago, I nearly died in a surfing accident, and it's not the first time that I've managed to dodge a bullet. Okay, but I don't live with many regrets. These are more reminders of how special things are. Okay, so one thing that I would do differently, all right, is if I could go back to my 12-year-old, 16-year-old self, the thing that I would say is collaborate, team up. So for too long, and I think some of us are guilty of it, some of us are not, some of us are born natural collaborators, but it's easy for us to think we can do it all ourselves. It's hard to think, hey, I should ask someone, do they want to join me? But the truth is that if you collaborate and team up, you are increasing the chances that you can do something more amazing, more powerful, more impactful. Okay, and the other thing is that it is not a linear effect. So when you team up with one other person, that does not necessarily mean that you now can do twice as much. You may be able to do 3 times as much, 4 times. Okay, when you're in a good team, and I hope one day you do experience what it's like to be in a very small but kick-ass team, you know, one that can change the world, kick-ass, one that people get out of the way of because they're a force of nature. All right, when you experience that, you'll know that it's exponential. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Yes, I know I'm an old guy giving advice. Pac-Man is probably the first game that I played. You know, it's probably in your ancient retro, list, or maybe it's a game that your mum and dad reference. Now, Shozu, how are we going for time? Just want to make sure we're going good.
Yeah, we've still got a few minutes. If you're ready for questions or anything like that.
Yeah, okay. The other tip too is more sort of a technical tip for games or software that I'll throw out to everyone, and that is use a component-based approach or break things down. So if you can, don't approach things, you know, from the top. Start with a small piece of that, you know, whatever it is you're making, build that, and then plug it into something else and build on. Yeah, if you can do that, you'll make your software development, I think, just it'll open up a lot more opportunities, and just something that takes you a while to learn. Okay, Shozu, if we've got some questions, I'd love to answer them.
Yeah, we do. We've got a few here. So first question is, what should someone who's currently in high school, what should they study to become a game designer?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. There is a lot that you can study. If you want to be a game designer, the first place I would go would be somewhere like Udemy, okay, that have really cheap, really good quality courses. So while you're still in high school, that's a great opportunity. Pair that up with either a free license from something like Unity or Unreal and just start experimenting. Yeah, so an online course, some experimenting, and then see if you can convince a few buddies to, you know, team up and make something over a weekend. Yeah, just experiment.
Absolutely. Another question we've got is, why have you told people who have applied to your company no at least twice?
Yeah, this is even better. These are great questions. So no, it's normally time or resources. So yeah, so if you do get a no, it doesn't mean necessarily has anything to do with your skills, your experience, your aptitude. It could just be that that company or that person is just too busy. So in those cases, I remember the first one was I didn't want to take on interns at that point because we were very stretched. We had some big deadlines, and sometimes internships for companies can be seen as a resource, drain. Okay, which is not normally true. Like normally, if you get a good intern, they're actually amazing. Okay, so But the people that you're applying to are more than likely very busy, and there's probably 10 other reasons why they wouldn't. Some other times I've said no to people based on the characters that they presented or the personality. So for me, I look for people that can embrace failure. I normally ask what scares people in my interviews. So I think I've done 120 interviews in the last sort of 2 months. At least I think 74 in the last 2 weeks. So I want to cut through the BS. Okay. So if I'm saying no and it's not because of time, it's normally because I have someone who's just giving me answers that I think they just want me to hear. Right? Don't do that. Or I just don't think that they have the aptitude to embrace both failure, but also to come to work every day with a beginner's mindset. So that's something you may or may not have heard mentioned, and that's the idea that you come to your workplace or wherever, you leave the ego at the door and you come there willing to just learn from each other, to share information, but really just to be excited to learn.
Absolutely. Another question, sort of like a follow-up one from before. What would you recommend studying at uni, I guess, to help with game development?
Yeah, okay. So for game development, you can do everything from computer science. A lot of game developers will do computer science to multimedia. You can major in media and digital technology. A lot of overlap there. Even some of the arts. If you are going to be a game artist or a designer, these all will definitely provide value. But I would say that don't wait till you graduate your your degree to start making games. Yeah, start making games next weekend. This weekend.
Absolutely. I think that's, we'll go for one more question since we have a little bit of time. I guess we'll go back to what you covered earlier. What do you like about Minecraft and what do you enjoy building in Minecraft? Yeah,
so I love Minecraft because it's a gigantic sandpit. It's the ultimate sandbox environment, and I love that you can play with others. So I've got to admit that I'm only a recent convert to really getting into Minecraft, and this is like, I know, a lot of kids out there right now have probably been playing for close to 10 years, right? So I only got serious about Minecraft in the last 2 years, and I can admit it took a tutorial made by my 2 sons for me to really get in. Now, what excited me and what hooked me was redstone. So when I could start making weird and wonderful stuff in there, and I could do that, it was a weird, proud moment for my kids who had helped me graduate and had taught me, and I was proud to show them. I actually remember one day where I took a day off work. I'm admit this too. Nobody tell anybody. Don't tell any of my team this, but I did take off a day just to build out a sky rail that was powered by redstone, and because I wanted a faster way to get from somewhere like where our village was over to somewhere else. So I did put in a full 8 hours, and I feel better that I've admitted that anyway. That's good. Now, was there any other questions that we
do have a few more, but we have run out of time. So no, really, thanks for coming along today and presenting it at the virtual Big Day In. And it's actually really interesting to hear about your perspective on game development and how you apply collaboration and creativity in your day-to-day work.
Yeah, thanks, Shorzu, and thanks everyone who connected and played. I don't know if you guys have done live gaming over Microsoft Teams yet, but we just did it, so it worked. Well done. We're gonna have to scale it up.
Perfect. Cheers, Mike. Hopefully some of you are inspired by his presentation and are already planning your first video game, maybe even for this weekend. As with previous weeks, unanswered questions will be answered by Mike and posted on www.thebigdayin.com.au at a later date. Next up, we have Krista, an animator with over 20 years professional industry experience in creative and commercial filmmaking, animation, and visual effects. Her professional film credits include The Matrix, Matrix Reloaded, Rabbit Proof Fence, Moulin Rouge, and the Academy Award-winning Happy Feet. Currently, the head of animation at AFTRS, Australia's premier screen content and radio school, she champions the technological creativity and collaborations that bring stories to audiences all across Australia and the world. So please join me in welcoming our next presenter, Krista Jordan from the Australian Film, Television and Radio School, with A squared plus B squared equals to Oscar.
Hi everyone, Krista here, that's my slide you can see, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you to Mike for that awesome presentation, that was really fantastic. I'm just going to show you a little bit of a history around the institution that I come from currently, which is AFTRS, and I am going to throw out a question for you. I'm not sure how many of you have read all the presenters, but I'm really curious to know how many of you know what AFTRS is. I will get to who we are shortly, and this next little clip will be a bit of a preview about who we are, but I'm really curious about that question. So just watch and think and answer for me while I play this little clip. So that's right, it's AFTRS, and for those of you who are not aware, AFTRS is the National Film, Television and Radio School. And yes, I am Krista and I'm the head of animation at the school, and I have some amazing sorts of insights. I hope they're amazing to you. I certainly think they're amazing insights about the nature of technology, engineering, and the craft, the creative crafts, particularly in screen story, also in radio, but my expertise is in screen. And, you know, often when you come to these sorts of presentations, it's a bit of a why should I listen to you? Now, I want to show you some stuff just to give you some context about who I am and where I come from. So these are some of the films that I've worked on in various roles over the years. I'm very old, as you can tell, but they're really cool and amazing films. And the one thing about making screen stories that's really interesting is that it's evolved so much, even in my sort of lifespan. So when I started learning on all these films like Peter Rabbit and way back when I learned how to work in these spaces, and I've always worked in virtual crafts, so that means I've worked on computers my whole life in screen story. There was no sort of careers careers days where I could go and learn about these technical careers or these creative technical careers in film and screen. I had to learn on the box, as they say. And right now, it's an amazing time because there's so many opportunities for all of you to be involved in the various creative and technical roles that are available to you in film. So I've worked in broadcast design, series design, feature film design, animation, all those sorts of things. But that's just to give you some context about all the various places where these amazing technology careers, creative technology careers exist. And what's interesting to me is when Mike was talking, he also talks about creativity in technology. Often what I hear when people talk about films, or people that think, you know, they can't work in film, that it's too creative or too artsy-fartsy, that there's this idea that everyone who works on a film is either an actor or potentially someone who illustrates or someone who works in costume. That's 100% true, but that is not the whole story. And I'm going to use a particular example that I'm hoping most of you have seen. Theoretically, you should have, given that in 2019 it was the biggest film of the year. And by big, I mean it grossed not millions, but billions of dollars. And it's, you know, an amazing piece of work. Many, many films built up around it with thousands of people working on it. Now, while you might have watched the film, what I'm curious to know is how many of you actually sit through those ridiculously long list of end credits, right? So often when you think about a film, and because of film history, they put all the sort of the older style crafts that go towards film at the beginning. So you see the director and the actor and all that sort of stuff. But if you're patient and you sit and wait and you're interested in technology and film careers, end credits, particularly in Endgame, are a rich resource, and I'll show you why. So look at some of these end credits. We've got data wrangler, FX TD, systems engineer, lighting technician, rigging TD, software developer, shading TD, electricians, props manufacturers, creature TDs, R&D standing for research and development, and we're talking about research and development in both engineering and also in software development and tool development. CG supervisor stands for computer graphics supervisor, and they're the people that allow teams to work out. And again, like Mike, it's a team sport, as you can see, lots of collaboration here. So you have supervisors who are bringing all these technical and creative people together to build these amazing films. IT, information technology, LiDAR scanning, drone pilot, that was one of the roles. What a cool role. Drone pilots didn't exist 10 years ago as part of your film crew, but absolutely now they are. Another amazing technical and creative career. And drone pilots will often have amazing camera skills as well, using very high-end pieces of camera engineering attached to drones to produce amazing work. And the list goes on, right? So it's pretty massive. Pyro technician, if you like blowing things up, that's another good gig as well. I don't mind a bit of blowing things up, that's kind of fun. Shader writers, music even. Music can be a very technical career in terms of generating music through various different systems, whether they're virtual systems, computer-based systems, or live musicians. All sorts of amazing and interesting things. So if you're ever wondering what could I do in a screen story, how could I work in a big, amazing feature film, there's no roles there for me. I challenge you to think of your favourite film, and feel free to put that in the chat. Think of your favourite film, and then go back and look at the list of credits, and you will see the richness and the diversity of the people working in these spaces. And I'm passionate about the idea that creative, technical, scientific or engineering students who might never think that I could work in films creatively, I'm very passionate about saying to you that you absolutely can. And let's have a look at some of that film history. I'm going to start with Oscar. The Academy Awards, one of the most iconic awards around the world that recognises skill in these spaces. Now, often we only see, again, the marketing piece, the piece where you get to see the glamorous artists and all that sort of thing. But I want to debunk something for you about those awards. There is another set of awards that have been running since 1931, which was the 4th Academy Awards, and that's the Scientific and Technical Awards area. They run every year. Ever since the Academy Award started, well, from the 4th Academy Award, we'll give that a free pass. And they are designed in recognition of the original developments as a result of working in motion picture production or screen production in order to accelerate the technology and science behind film. Film and screen story have always been instigators of great and amazing technologies. So what you may think is, well, that's pretty cool, but I'm an Australian and surely I couldn't win a technical or creative Oscar. Well, many Australians have. This is a friend of mine. His name's Guy Griffiths. He's the one with the red circle around his head. And there's a bunch of other Australians with him, and this is them winning a 2005 SciTech Oscar for their work on working on an actual workstation project called Cineon. Now, Cineon was specifically designed to facilitate creative artists and technical artists working and demonstrating their work and sharing it, as you do in collaboration, in a special way. And so Cineon was a workstation build that they produced, and it won them essentially Academy Award, right? Guy Griffiths grew up in Australia, currently lives in Melbourne, really nice guy, went to school just like you did, you know, no amazing sort of special credentials. But like him, you too, if you're interested and you're excited and you're creative in those spaces, there's opportunities for you to work in all areas of screen production. So this is him a bit later in life. And the reason I like to show this is because, you know, he was pivotal as part of the team at Animal Logic. I worked at Animal Logic alongside him. He was the director of research and development of Animal Logic that worked on many of those Academy Award winning films produced by Animal Logic. And underpinning that success was the creative people. Yes, an amazing art department, amazing storytellers, amazing editors, but they wouldn't have made it to the screen without the technical creativity of his R&D team and all the technical artists, creative technical artists that work underneath him, right? So that's an absolutely legit Australian example of excellence in science and tech, winning an Oscar in service of screen story. And that could be any one of you, which is super cool. I think that's really cool. So thinking more about the sorts of things that exist in the world that you might not realise were actually inspired by that fundamental sort of film principle, which is we have an amazing story to tell. We don't know how to tell it. And sometimes we're going to build stuff in order to make it happen, right? So there was a guy called John Knoll, and he had a brother. And one of them was a keen photographer, and he worked at ILM, Industrial Light and Magic. I'm sure you all know that one, right? And he was inspired by that experience of working in ILM and working on film to produce amazing images, to think about better ways to do it. How could we do this better? And it happened that his brother Tom was doing a PhD in computer imaging, right? So they got together and they thought about things that they could do. John realised there was some really amazing creative stuff that was pushing the boundaries at ILM. And Tom, his brother, was doing a PhD in computer imaging, and it seemed like a natural combination. So they got together, and the upshot of that sort of duo, that creative collaboration, was Photoshop, right? And Photoshop is a tool that's completely endemic in the world now, inspired by work on film and a bit of computer imaging and computer knowledge combined together, so that now we all have access to this amazing piece of kit, beautiful piece of kit. I'm sure many of you have used it, and many other softwares have based their technologies around the principles developed in Photoshop. In fact, when I first used Photoshop, there were no layers. There was no undo. If you stuffed up, you learn how to version really well. I'm that old. Yes, it's true. So, and Photoshop is so endemic now, and we use it so much that we even use it in language. Like if you look up Photoshop it, you can see pictures of Madonna being magically reinvented back to 20 years old, or you can see amazing, creative, beautiful images that go towards, you know, telling great stories or being part of beautiful publications, and it's endemic. So this is where the concept that you can't be technical in film and that it has no value is basically debunked. There are many, many technologies that have been developed in order to serve a film that ultimately end up being used elsewhere in the world and improve everybody's life as a result of it. So there are extra benefits to working in those spaces. So in reality, it's completely true. A squared plus B squared does equal an Oscar, and you could all win one if you were interested in it. So I'm going to show you a little film of what it looks, some of that technology in the more engineering space, the more sort of physical engineering space, not so much the virtual software development space looks like. This image here that you're looking at, this is all shot at the Australian Film, Television and Radio School, and it's showing some of the amazing pieces of kit that is regularly used inside film and radio production and technology. All sorts of equipment, ways of measuring light, ways of photographing light, ways of dealing with sound and audio, ways of creating, you know, artificial experiences. And it's actually all in service of telling stories and all in service of making these, you know, connecting with humans. But all of these amazing bits of kit are part of the creative work of technical and scientific people, people who like computers, people who like, you know, sitting in their basement hacking away. So there is, in the world of film, screen and radio, there's roles for everybody. So yes, you could be the creative person in the art department with amazing visualization skills. That's true. But never think that just because you like tech and you like, hanging out and doing math, you can't be a creative. Fundamentally, if you're good at any of those things, you are creative. But you can also contribute to film. And I'm going to link that all together by a little quote I've got here from Dr. David Eagleman. And he's a neuroscientist and he's a CEO of a company called Neosensory, which says creativity is what human brains do, right? So when you think about creativity, it's not just about artsy-fartsy creativity in film or artsy-fartsy creativity in the Hunger Games or Endgame. Underpinning all of that is a desire to make things and create new, and that creativity exists both in the storytelling, in the more traditional arts crafts, but also in the technology, the engineering and the software areas. So if any of you are interested in it, you can absolutely work in Australia. We have some of the best companies in the world. We've won Oscars, many Oscars in all sorts of spaces, doing amazing stuff. And interestingly, as Mike said, many of you said in the previous talk, where do I go to learn this sort of stuff? Go where your interests lie, but know that you can apply all of your technical creativity or your science creativity or your whatever inspires you in those spaces. You can take those to whatever area or whatever industry you love and enjoy. So don't think for a second that you can't be involved in filmmaking, screen story, animation, visual effects. All those incredibly rich experiences are right at your doorstep. And if you come to AFTRS, we can teach you very much about the screen side of things. So if you're hugely technical, there's other places you can go and study. There's Pixar in a Box. The Khan Academy produces a great website, and in it there's a section called Pixar in the Box when they unpack a lot of this stuff, both on the more traditional side and on the software and the rigging side. So if you're interested in that, absolutely check it out. So as we're heading towards the end, I want to show you a film that I particularly love, that I think, an excerpt from it, a little how did they do it, that demonstrates how much technology and engineering can be involved in producing some of the best films in the world. I don't know how many of you have seen it, but this film's Inception, and I absolutely love it. So I won't talk over it so you can hear what they're saying, but I'd love to show you this little bit of an insight into what it requires in terms of the technology and the collaboration and the diversity of the creativity to get that amazing story up on a screen in front of you. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. Sorry, my bad.
The horizontal rotating corridor was an early concept that was in the script, which started off as like a 40-foot corridor and then stretched to a 60-foot corridor, and then Chris Nolan felt that he needed a 100-foot revolving corridor.
After we determined the methodology for rotating the sets, which was basically suspending the set in these huge rings, Chris Corbould had one of his engineers work with us initially on what size the rings needed to be and how they were going to function, because there was an enormous amount of structural steel that needed to be welded and formed months ahead of when the set needed to be built.
There was a series of, I think, 8 30-foot diameter rings, which were all joined together, and each one of those rings was rotated using an electric motor via camshafts and drive wheels. The whole thing had to be built to close tolerances, because if it was out or if the rings weren't totally round, it would have given us all sorts of problems. It would have created vibrations and bumps, and the main thing about it was the accuracy in actually fabricating the rig.
I mean, the idea of using a centrifuge to manipulate gravity, it's been done on various films, most notably Kubrick's 2001, and I like the idea of repurposing that technology and really trying to choreograph an entire fight sequence. And
I'm just going to pause it there for 1 second, just to note that in this particular film, this was a huge decision that was made about how is the best way to bring this to the screen. Often people go, oh, let's just do it with special effects. but there's much more consideration around this. This is an actual live effect that serves the story well. And in order to do that, and they talk about this a little bit, they made decisions to make this as real, in inverted commas, as possible. And when you have a look and watch it, and I'd love for anyone to dip into the chat and tell me why you think it was important that they didn't do this sort of on a blue screen or a green screen. So let's keep watching.
Camera movement and all the rest, really do something that could be completely in camera in a way that I hadn't seen before.
With any of the sets that required this movement, all the equipment had to be locked into the set. It either had to rotate with it if it made sense, or the set would rotate out of the light. So it did require a lot of planning on my part in order to determine what was going to happen with lights when the set moved and what was going to happen with the camera. Is the camera separate from the set, or is it actually rotating with the set?
If you lock the camera on the ground, the audience doesn't see the room spinning. The audience just sees us moving all over the place. It looks like we're jumping on the ceiling and stuff. In order to actually get it done, I couldn't think of it that way. I had to think of it as, this is the ground. Okay, now this is the ground. Okay, now this is the ground.
Bring on the double.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt had, I think, probably only about 2 weeks rehearsal, and he honestly was fantastic, and he attacked it with such excitement and enthusiasm, and he was determined to do it all himself, and it really, really pays off.
You have to have the right mindset and the right physicality to do it. If you start looking outside, you get motion sickness, you do physically get disorientated, so it's keeping inside of this environment. And I mean, the director tried it, I tried it. It was not easy.
Okay, so I'm very curious. I'm going to pop this slide off so I can see you are. I'm going to stop sharing now because I'd love to see you all a little bit. But I am super curious to know, in terms of some of those answers, if there were any answers, about why you thought it was so important. So I'm gonna hand over to my moderators.
Absolutely. Yeah, we do have a few questions relating to actually earlier in your presentation. I think LiDAR scanning was one of the mentioned roles in some of in the back end of credits.
Yeah.
So can you explain what LiDAR scanning is?
Absolutely. So LiDAR scanning is where you're using technology, a scanner essentially, a spatial scanner, in order to emulate a real world place, usually a set or a location, so that it can then be built virtually inside a computer and replicated. Because often what happens is you'll have live actors out on a set. It could be blue screen, it could be whatever. But in order to make sure that when you put them in the virtual set, that it matches, so their feet land in the same place, so that everything feels right. So when they touch something or they do something, all those things are in the right space. So LiDAR scanning is a very important technical role that means that you can match a live action place with a virtual place.
Absolutely. Sounds quite important for some
films. Oh, massive, huge.
On that topic, I guess, what's the difference between, I guess, a blue screen and a green screen, and what are the applications of either or both?
Oh, excellent question. It's okay. So blue screens and green screens, really, it's just a way of separating something from its background or something from something else, right? So if I'm wearing blue jeans and a blue shirt, I wouldn't really want to be on a blue screen, because what it uses is the colour, the luminance and the colour values. Technically, when I pick it on the screen, like you do in Photoshop, like when you use a picker and you can see the colour values, it uses those values to say, oh, I'm going to pick the pixels, I'm going to pick the colours that are not close to that blue. So a lot of what determines what you put behind someone is dictated by what they're wearing or what they've got. However, the trick is everyone thinks it's just a magic thing, but if you go and look, say, for example, at the end game credits, there's a lot of manual work that ends up being done because some of those characters are blue on a blue screen. So it's not the most efficient way to do it there. So there's other much more laborious techniques that you have to use. But what you're doing is you're trying to make the best choice for most of it. But it's not a magic pill. For example, green, if you use a green screen, it's very close. It's got lots of the same sort of values as blonde hair. So if you wanted to keep blonde hair, ideally you don't do it on a green screen. So there's all sorts of little tricks in there as well.
Oh, that's quite interesting to know. I guess we have time for maybe one or two more questions.
Sure.
One question we've got here is, do you have an Oscar?
No, I don't personally have an Oscar, but I have worked on Oscar-winning films. So as with anything, it's a team sport, right? So there's thousands of people who work on Oscar-winning films. You cannot make a film, not one person makes a film. It might be driven by somebody's vision, and it might be there is a business side to all of this too. It's not just for fun. So there's investment and there's a whole business angle. So those of you who are interested in business and accounting and finance, you could all end up executive producers. That's where a lot of the power is, just between you and me. But it's a team sport. It's absolutely a team sport. So everyone contributes to an Oscar-winning film. Generally, the directors or specific crafts are awarded it. I'm going to tell you a story about a particular Oscar that enraged the virtual craft community, and it was The Life of Pi, and the cinematographer won an award, and a huge component of that film was actual virtual cinematography, but no one recognised that component of it. So I think there's still some misconceptions about how much, even now with these amazing technical, virtually generated films, how much of it is actually generated by virtual artists.
Absolutely. One final question we'll go to. What is the Oscar-winning film? What are the Oscar-winning films that you've worked on?
Happy Feet, Matrix. I don't know. Did Matrix win an Oscar? I don't work on films to win Oscars. So to be honest, I couldn't list them all. Did Moulin Rouge? Moulin Rouge won an Oscar, I think, as well. Yeah. So yeah, there's a few. I can go back and research it if you like, but definitely Happy Feet. Happy Feet was probably the biggest one for us because it was the first I was working at Animalogic at the time, and it was the first substantial virtual CG feature film produced almost entirely in Australia, and it set the bar that much higher in terms of the execution and the style of the film, and it did win an Oscar. It was an Australian team, Australian director, Australian written stories. It's probably the one that we all hold, certainly I hold very dear.
Wonderful. I think that's all the time we have for today.
No
but
worries.
Amazing to hear from you, Krista, and really actually interesting to hear about your experiences in animation and filmmaking and how technology integrates into that quite seamlessly, actually.
Awesome. I hope it was interesting. It's really hard not to see all your fabulous faces, but I hope you enjoyed it. And don't forget, there's a role for every one of you in creative storytelling, whether it's on audio or on a screen, in audio or on a screen.
Perfect. Thanks, Krista. As with Mike, Krista will be answering all the remaining questions as soon as she can, and we'll make sure to post her responses on the www.thebigdayin.com.au. Don't forget to also check out the ACS Foundation Career Wheel if you want to find out more about the various roles in technology. The Career Wheel and link will be on your screen now. We'd also like to thank all our sponsors who've made this virtual Big Day In possible, along with our two amazing presenters today, Mike and Krista. We hope you all took something away from this week's virtual Big Day In. Next week, our presenters are Jeff Quattromani from Johnson & Johnson, who you might have seen on the Today Show, and Annie Daly from the Australian Space Agency. The link for the 17th of June session with Jeff and Annie is on screen now, and we'll also email this link to your teachers for any of you who are watching at home. Don't forget, if you want to rewatch this presentation or presentations from past weeks, they'll be posted on our website later today at www.thebigdayin.com.au. Just remember to click on the past events tab. I look forward to seeing you all next Wednesday at 11 AM Australian Eastern Standard Time. Until then, stay safe.